Hi everyone, it's Latin Roses. If you ever wanted to learn how to make a pumpkin pie from a real pumpkin, then keep watching. The first thing you need to do is preheat your oven to 400 degrees. The next thing you need to do, and probably by far the most challenging, would be actually to have to cut your pumpkin in half. I started working mine already so you wouldn't be bored watching it. And then you have to scoop out all the seeds. I always save mine for later to roast them, and get out all that goopy, stringy pulp inside of the pumpkin. And this is probably the hardest part with cutting it and the least fun, but these are small pumpkins, and these are baking pumpkins, and they're small, and they usually don't take too long to actually get everything cleaned out. You can also, I've actually used the real carving pumpkins as well. When I couldn't find these in the store, they were all out. I have used the big, large carving pumpkins, and guess what? It still came out really good. And the thing about using a real pumpkin, I have a little bowl that I'm going to put all my seeds in, save them for later. The one good thing about using a real pumpkin is not only do you get delicious seeds later, but when you buy puree, pumpkin puree already made from a can, you're not really sure what you're getting, what they put in there to preserve the pumpkin. And I know maybe some people don't really mind because it's just the ease of it is so much easier, but I'm telling you, my son agrees with me. The homemade fresh pumpkin that you get when you make it yourself, it's packed with so many vitamins like vitamin A, C, and K, but it also, the flavors are enhanced. The pie comes out much lighter than those pies that you see in the store. And the flavors of the pumpkin spice are so pungent. So it's just a different taste. I think it's just an amazing, amazing taste. So I would give it a try. I mean, at least once in your life you can, maybe amaze and dazzle your friends. Okay, usually I just cut my little small pumpkin in half and then I clean it out. But sometimes I find it easier to cut it in half or another half again, just so it's easier. Well, I usually have a different type of a scraping tool, but just to actually help get all this orange string, pulpy string stuff out. So that's also another way to get it out. After you cleaned out your pumpkins, they don't have to be perfect, but as long as you got most of the seeds and the stringy pulp out, they're ready to be placed onto a baking tray and placed into the oven for approximately 50 to 60 minutes until they're softened. When the pumpkin comes out of the oven, it should look toasted. Now that your pumpkin's out of the oven, you want to preheat your oven to 420 for the next part. You're going to take your pumpkin pieces and you should be able to literally peel off the back. You can use a knife to help remove the back of the pumpkin skin from the pumpkin, but usually the pumpkin's so soft it just peels right off. You don't need to. It's quicker and faster and probably safer just to use your hands, and that's what I do. Just use my hands to remove all these pumpkin pieces, all the skin from the pumpkin. After you get all the pumpkin skin removed from the pumpkin pieces, you're just gonna give the pumpkin pieces, you're just gonna chop them up in little pieces. It doesn't have to be super tiny. What we're gonna do next is actually put them in a blender and turn these little pieces into the most delicious pumpkin puree. Adding our pumpkin pieces to the blender. And we're gonna blend it. And we're gonna need to add a little bit of water so that it won't be so thick. But careful, don't put too much, just kind of eyeball it. So we don't want just pure liquid either. As you're blending, you might have to stop to add a little more water so that it's not so thick. After you're done blending it and it comes out fairly smooth, you're going to pour it into a container. I'm going to put it in this bowl so we can. Pumpkin should yield you approximately 2 cups of pumpkin puree, and that's about what I got. I measured it behind the scenes, and this is going to be perfect for our pie. Okay, it's time to actually start making our pie. So what we're going to need is to break open, crack, and add 2 eggs. And we're going to beat the eggs. And then to this, we're going to add 1 cup of brown sugar. Next, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of flour and half a teaspoon of salt. We're going to start mixing that around. You want to get everything incorporated in there. And the next thing we're going to add is 2 cups of our pumpkin puree that we made earlier. Gonna need a spoon. I've got it slid in. I added 2 cups of the pumpkin puree, and we're going to start to mix all that together. Okay, to the mixture, we're going to add 1 12-ounce can of evaporated milk. And I'm sorry, you cannot use almond milk, whole milk, or any other kind of milk. I find the other milks just don't firm up and make a pie an actual firm pie. So you must use a can of evaporated milk. And last but not least, we need 2.5 teaspoons pumpkin spice. It's already starting to smell really, really good. And you're just going to keep mixing that until you get it all incorporated. Now you might have noticed there's still like a little bit of lumps from the actual natural pumpkin puree that we just made. So we're going to run this through a sieve, a strainer, just to make sure we don't get any thick, yucky parts in our pie. So I'm going to mix this up for a few more minutes, and then we're going to run it through sieve. So I'm going to run the pie mixture through a plastic sieve strainer really quick, just to get out any of the residue of the thick pie pieces. Just a few. And then I just kind of leave my hand. I have washed my hands, so. You should do this at least once. I usually like to do it 2 times. You can see there's a little bit of the pumpkin like residue, and you don't want that in your pie. Okay, I did run it through the sieve one last time, second time, and the second time it literally had nothing in there. So I just want to make extra sure that when I pour this pie mixture into the crust, that it's a clean, smooth, pulp-free mixture. And so I'm going to get ready to put this into our pie crust. I usually make my own pie crust from scratch, and I just make it actually literally inside my pie dish. But because when I bake a pumpkin pie from scratch using a real pumpkin, it takes longer. So to save me some time, I just use the ready-made, ready-to-go pie crust that you can get at your local grocery store, and I just use that. And I actually don't really care, honestly, about being super fancy with the edges. You can if you want. You can make really pretty edges, but I am just gonna, to save time, I'm just gonna press it against here, and it doesn't have to be fancy today. When I have guests coming over, I'm taking a pie over to a family gathering. I will go a little fancier, but just for the purposes of showing you guys how to make this pie, I am not going to spend time on it. So I'm gonna whisk my pie mixture one last time. I'm gonna pour it in to my pie plate. This one came out pretty good, but sometimes for some reason I'll end up with extra pie filling and I try to use it all, and that's a mistake. You should have like half an inch, fourth of an inch from the pie filling to the pie top of the pie crust, so that it doesn't overflow too high. It's a nice mixture, and I found that really works best. So preheat your oven to 420 to start, and then after 10 minutes we're going to lower it, and we're going to lower it down to 400, and then finish baking this for about 55 minutes. My pie just came out of the oven and it looks good. What I like to do is, one of my secrets for me when I serve my homemade pies is I like to actually refrigerate them overnight, or at least a couple hours before I serve it for a party. That way it's really extra firm and it doesn't, it's really solid, and I think it just looks and tastes better, and it's easier to cut into. Just much more easier to serve. So that is one of my tricks. I don't serve it fresh out of the oven. To me, it's best when it's been in the refrigerator, for at least a few hours before serving. Now it's time for the taste test. Here is a slice of my homemade pie made from a real pumpkin, not a can. Remember I told you I didn't make the perfect crust on top because I just wanted to actually show you how to make the pie. It smells amazing. This is good. You can really taste the enhanced flavors of the pumpkin spice. Way more delicious, in my opinion, than any store-bought pie you could bake. So I suggest you try this once. Yes, it's a lot more work and effort to make than a store-bought pie or using a can of pumpkin puree, but this stuff is really, really good. You really should give it a try at least once in your life, and you can dazzle your friends with what you can do, a new skill that you have. You're welcome. So if you like this video, hit like. If you want to stay in touch, subscribe. And as always, I wish you love, peace, and joy.